When I first signed the contract, I told myself it was just a job. 5 million rupees. 1 year. A temporary marriage to one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. In return, I would help repair his public image and secure a business deal that depended on the appearance of stability. There was only one complication. Aram Khan, the brilliant and reclusive CEO of Khan Holdings, was believed to be permanently disabled after a tragic accident 3 years ago. He used a wheelchair. He rarely appeared in public, and the board believed that presenting him as a devoted husband would strengthen investor confidence. I needed the money desperately. My father's medical bills were piling up, and my small teaching salary could barely keep our house running. When the proposal came through a distant family connection, it sounded unbelievable. A fake marriage, no expectations beyond public appearances, formal events, and a shared address in his massive mansion. Separate rooms, separate lives, absolute professionalism. I convinced myself it was simple, but nothing about Aram Khan was simple. The day I moved into the mansion, I expected coldness. Instead, I found silence. The house was beautiful but empty in spirit. Wide marble floors, tall windows, and carefully arranged furniture that no one seemed to use. Staff members moved quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air. He was waiting for me in the main hall. Aram sat straight in his wheelchair, dressed in a charcoal suit. His posture was confident, his expression unreadable. His dark eyes studied me with unsettling focus. "You're late," he said calmly. "It's 5 minutes," I replied before I could stop myself. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I like honesty." That was our first conversation as husband and wife. There was no warmth, no ceremony, just a handshake in front of 2 lawyers and a photographer. I told myself again, it's just a job. Living with him was stranger than I imagined. In public, he played the role perfectly. He held my hand during press conferences, introduced me as my wife with quiet authority, and listened to me speak as though my words mattered. In private, he became distant. He worked long hours in his home office. Sometimes I heard raised voices during video conferences. Other times, I caught him staring at nothing, lost in thought. What surprised me most was not his temper or arrogance, it was his restraint. He never crossed boundaries. If I entered a room unexpectedly, he averted his eyes politely. If I struggled with something heavy, he called a staff member rather than insisting on helping. It felt respectful and confusing. One evening, about 2 months into our arrangement, I found him in the library. Rain tapped softly against the windows. He wasn't working. He was simply staring at the fireplace. "You look troubled," I said without thinking. He didn't answer immediately. "Do I?" he asked finally. "Yes." He studied me again, as if weighing something. "Why did you really agree to this?" he asked. "For the money," I replied honestly. "My father is ill." He nodded slowly. "And if you didn't need it, I would have never agreed." A flicker passed through his eyes. "Disappointment. That's fair," he said quietly. For the first time, I wondered what he had expected. Weeks passed, and small things began to change. He started asking about my day. He listened when I talked about my students, about the books I loved, about my dreams of opening a small school one day. He never interrupted, never mocked. Once, during a public charity event, I stumbled slightly on the stage steps. Before anyone else noticed, his hand tightened around mine, steadying me. It was firm, strong, stronger than I expected. I glanced at him instinctively, but his expression was perfectly composed. Still, something about that moment lingered in my mind. The truth revealed itself on a quiet afternoon. I had returned early from visiting my father. The house was unusually silent. As I walked past the gym room, a space I had never seen used, I heard something. Footsteps. Heavy, steady footsteps. My heart pounded. I moved closer and pushed the door open slightly. And there he was, Aram Khan, standing, not leaning, not trembling, standing on his own 2 feet. He was walking slowly across the room, focused and determined. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then he turned. Our eyes met. Shock flashed across his face. The silence stretched between us, fragile and electric. "You can walk," I whispered. He didn't deny it. Instead, he exhaled slowly and sank into a nearby chair, not the wheelchair, just a normal chair. "Yes." The word felt like a betrayal. "Since when?" I demanded. Since 6 months after the accident. My mind reeled. Then why? Because, he interrupted gently, the accident was not an accident. The world tilted. He explained everything that afternoon. A rival company had sabotaged his car. The crash left him temporarily paralyzed. During his recovery, he discovered corruption within his own board. Men who planned to push him out permanently, believing he was weak. So he pretended. He let the world believe he was still disabled. He watched. He gathered evidence. He waited. And the marriage? I asked quietly. His gaze softened. That part wasn't part of the original plan. My pulse quickened. The board insisted I appear stable. Married. Harmless. A faint smile touched his lips. They thought it would make me easier to control. And you agreed? Yes. Using me. His jaw tightened. At first. The honesty hurt more than if he had lied. At first. I repeated. His voice lowered. Then you walked into my house and spoke to me like I was still human. The vulnerability in his tone caught me off guard. Everyone treated me like I was broken, he continued, either with pity or calculation. You treated me like a man. I didn't know what to say. You argued with me, he added softly. You challenged me. You laughed at my terrible jokes. I didn't laugh at them. I protested weakly. He smiled fully for the first time. Exactly. Something inside me shifted. But you lied to me, I said. Yes. Every day. Yes. His honesty made it harder to stay angry. I was planning to tell you, he said, after the investigation was complete. And if I hadn't walked in, he held my gaze steadily. I would have told you anyway. Silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different. Charged. Real. The days that followed were complicated. I avoided him at first. I needed space to think, but I couldn't ignore the truth. He hadn't deceived me for selfish pleasure. He had been protecting his company, his employees, and himself. The wheelchair had been a shield. Still, trust once cracked doesn't mend easily. One night, I found him in the garden. He was sitting in the wheelchair again, staring at the stars. For appearances, he explained quietly when he noticed me. I walked toward him. Does it hurt? I asked. What? Pretending. He was silent for a long time. Yes, he admitted. Something softened in my chest. You could have told me sooner, I said. I was afraid. You? Afraid? Yes. His voice was barely above a whisper. Afraid that if you knew the truth, you would leave. The sincerity in his eyes made my heart stumble. This was always temporary, I reminded him gently. It doesn't have to be. The words hung between us. I felt the weight of them. I agreed to a contract, I said. I know. I needed money. I know. And you needed an image. He nodded, but somewhere between press conferences and quiet dinners, his voice faltered slightly. I stopped pretending. My breath caught. I fell in love with you, he said simply. There was no grand speech, no dramatic music, just truth. I searched his face for doubt. There was none. You don't have to say anything, he added quickly. I just couldn't keep hiding that part. My thoughts were tangled. When had I started caring? When had his absence from a room begun to feel noticeable? When had his approval started to matter? I don't know when it happened, I admitted softly. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing this as a job. Hope flickered in his eyes. I was angry, I continued. I still am a little. But when I thought about leaving, my voice trembled. It hurt. He inhaled sharply. Mobashira, he said carefully, as though my name was fragile. I don't want a fake marriage anymore. Neither did I. The investigation concluded 2 months later. The corrupt board members were removed quietly. Legal action followed. The rival company faced consequences. And one morning, without fanfare, Aram stood up publicly. The announcement shook the business world. He explained that his recovery had been private and gradual. The media erupted with headlines. Investors reacted with awe. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was the way he looked at me during the press conference, not as a partner in deception, but as his wife. Afterward, in the privacy of our home, he approached me carefully. No more contracts, he said. No more lies, I replied. He nodded. Stay, he asked softly. Not as a CEO, not as a strategist, just as a man. I will, I said. Not because of money, not because of obligation, But because somewhere between the lies and the truth, between the wheelchair and the strength he hid, I had found something real. Love. Our marriage was never part of his master plan. It wasn't part of mine either. But sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most genuine endings. I agreed to a fake marriage with a disabled CEO. I discovered he could walk. I discovered he had been pretending. But the one thing he never faked was loving me.